Well, hello, Sir Joel. How are you? Well, not quite Sir yet, but you're getting there.
I'm good, thank you. How are you? And how is the laptop and internet today?
Well, I tell you what, that was biting it. That was like nail bitingly close because the laptop just shut down. Anyway, here we are. We are live. How are you? And are you ready for yet another episode in series 2 of your wonderful fighting for the right to party?
Yes, Mac. And are you ready for this episode
I'm
and
here.
indeed for the entire saga to follow?
Absolutely, every step of the way. I'm fighting as well, just for the right to turn up to the party. Um, um, so it's all good. But Joel, today is going to be a little bit more. Let's say we're digging a little bit deeper today than we have in the last few episodes, because we're getting into the title, as it says, the new disruptor, the story behind the brand, and
And
that
we're digging deeper into what we touched on this in season one. That we're going even further down the rabbit hole um, to where the mole
absolutely
people live.
well. Right, right through to the beginning of the story, and it's an interesting one because everywhere you turn up, you turn up, and I love the fact that uh, you know not many people know your kind of full story, and you always turn up with a smile on your face. Um, consistently, you're always there, even if you like on our social Saturday this weekend, you were exhausted, weren't feeling well, and there you were, consistently showing up, and yet in the background, you have gone through some serious, let's say, judgment from other people, misconceptions, misunderstanding, um, and you are somebody who just kind of, you just take the world head on, and the whole RockstarX story. um, I think a lot of people will be able to resonate with it because of the fact that it's not something that you kind of came up with one day and went, that'll be nice. It's come through struggle. It's come through your personal experience, and as a lot of people say, the struggle is real. Your story is one that, for some people, just listening to the story may not want to get up in the morning thinking, wow, like, wow, that's that's one hell of a challenge. So, um, the first question I have for you before we start delving into the deeper stuff is, what gets you up in the morning?
My dog.
I kind of had a strange feeling. And Bailey is incredible. If you haven't seen Joel's posts, and seen the rock star that is Bailey, um, please go and check him out. He is incredible, and he's up for a vote for a competition at the moment as one of the cutest bloody puppies out there. But in saying that, besides Bailey, because Bailey's a good enough reason to get up, but you've been this positive before Bailey was even in the picture.
Yes. What got me up prior to having a dog in the picture um, is I love what I do, and I and when you love what you do, you don't tend to see it as work.
Absolutely, I 100% get that. So tell me, give me a second. I just realized I can see people are coming online, and I'm getting loads of little notifications pop up. So I just need to silence them. There we go. It's all good. So let's go right back. Because we've touched on the this very subtly, but going right back to kind of birth. side of things. Now, obviously, you probably from a mental perspective and kind of awareness, you didn't have a clue of all those things because unfortunately infants don't. But your parents had one heck of a journey and challenge in your early days. And when I first heard of the maple syrup urine syndrome that you have, I was like, that kind of sounded a little bit odd. Like I was thinking, Winnie the Pooh. I was thinking maple syrup, like honey, like what? I don't understand, because it's not something that I personally had come across before. But then doing a little bit of research and finding out how serious this is, and the fact that literally your life was on the line. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is and how it impacted the first let's say days and weeks and months of your life?
What is, I'm not qualified as a medical professional to go into the full explanation as to what it is. In short, it's a protein intolerance where the rest of society has got this wonderful little mechanism in their systems which allows them to break down any sorts of protein, whereas God only knows. Well, I hope he does, because that's the first question I'll be asking him when I end up there. Is what the fuck?
But
is
yeah,
partly there, but not fully there. A bit like me sometimes.
So I mean, the whole when you say unable to kind of process certain proteins, for me, I was quite shocked and surprised, because just with like dietary stuff, spending some time with you and grabbing some food and things like that, and I'm like, the things that I would kind of go under in most diets, people would go, that's if you go to gym, this is the kind of food that you should be eating, and it's all high proteins, and you were like, yeah, no, I'd rather live and see tomorrow. I don't want to die. I'm like, hold on. Not that you said that, but that's realistically the kind of the choices you're making when it comes to your dietary situation. So what kind of things can that most people have every day are you just unable to have?
Well, the big massive amounts of protein, like your standard fish and chicken and all the ones that smell nice and can't have, because well, it's not really my computer saying no, it's my body saying no.
So from an early age, you were definitely wired totally differently, so that you can come up
Yes.
with totally different outcomes and results. And sweet from the birth from birth, maple syrup. There we go. And can you explain to us that a lot of people may not kind of comprehend the impact here, because it's like, okay, so you can't eat certain proteins, so what? Some people are allergic to certain things and they just avoid them. But for you, it was a lot more life-threatening, but intricate as well, because at what was it, up until the age of 4, you had something called a nasogastric tube fitted. What does that even mean?
Nasogastric, so goes in through the nose and down to the stomach area to give me the right amounts of what I'm not allowed in controlled form. So
Okay.
in most foods, you get your standard amino acids. 3 of them I have to watch. Well, at least one of them I have to watch. So it's like playing seesaw and tightrope with your entire life. On one end, you are eating, you're controlling, you have to eat to live. On the other end, you've got the amino acid which you have to watch, which is of course the one that's responsible for this protein deficiency, which is the isoleucine. Apparently, keeping that low, having that daily keeps the leucine levels low, which still doesn't make sense to me, because why do you need one to keep the other one? It makes no sense. Personally, I would have had all in one. But
it's all about the chemical reaction.
Yeah, and I have that in concentrated measured forms. Once every day with a sachet. Now, why that's dangerous in normal way is it's not controlled. It's there, and a body like mine can break it down, but then it starts fighting against it. It doesn't know that that's good for it, because that in the little magic wand responsible for telling.
Live interruptions. There we go. Carry on.
The announcer stepped in. So yes, the magic wand responsible for all this, I call the magic wand, is made by the only organ capable of regenerating itself, and I have asked several times, well, if it's capable of doing that, why the hell can't we remove it and let it grow again with all of the ingredients? Unfortunately, one of the obvious reasons is you'll die.
Slight technicality.
And two, it would still have the same problem. So,
because it'll just regenerate in the same way.
It's the body that doesn't know how to produce it.
So, and for those listening might be wondering, well, what's this all got to do with the brand and the story behind RockstarX? But these are just some of the challenges that you have faced on your journey to getting to a situation where you've realized that people are different and people are treated differently because of their differences.
Yeah.
And the world's very strange that way. It's like people prefer to have well, if you like me, then I like you, because then it's something I can deal with. But if you think differently or operate differently, it's like it's like the whole as you defined it, Xbox versus what's the other one? You can see I don't play games often.
PlayStation, mobile.
PlayStation, yeah. Or just Apple versus Android or PC kind of thing. It's like, well, I don't like you because you're not Apple. It's like, okay, it's maybe I prefer Apple, but again, it's just a different operating system. So when it comes to you and your journey, you have fought so many challenges, because one of the things that people don't realize, while you're talking about your health situation there, is this is something that wasn't something that you just had until the age of 4, and then they found a magic cure, and then that's it. You then continue to have being fed by tube up until, was it the age of 18?
Age of 18, yeah. Age of 18, and then now I drink the bloody stuff. It's no better, but at least I haven't got anything sticking in me.
And so people understand. I mean, what kind of restriction? What did that mean to you, as a toddler, teenager, and growing up? What kind of restrictions did that put on you that every other person in the normal kind of run of the mill kind of day would take for granted?
From that age, it's a kind of masking really, because I never went with the school anywhere. So water parks were out, swimming pools were out. Why? Because I've got this ugly, great thing in my stomach. It's not great, ugly. It's not wasn't ugly. It wasn't great. Well, it was great, but it wasn't ugly. But to a kid, yeah.
Yeah, it's something that draws attention to yourself.
Who wants to have essentially an extra belly button?
And did that impact? Were you not able to play sports because that could be dangerous, or like what was the restriction on you as a result of both the syndrome and obviously having the tube implanted?
Well, along with that, there's a little episode at the beginning. Chapter one was still unfolding here. I had lost a lot of oxygen at birth due to this abnormality, and therefore I had splints.
And
we all know what they are.
Yes. So, but for those that don't know, because it's not something you see on that often. I grew up with family members that had it, so I was quite well aware of it. But what there are probably people watching. I mean, including the word neurodiversity.
Yep.
Through our process, we've discovered there's so many people that have never heard the word of neurodiversity. So I'm sure there are a couple of people out there who don't have a clue what splints are. So would you explain that and how that impacted you?
The best way I can explain it is a plastic sock open at the front. So essentially another leg, which meant to correct your legs or feet in my case from going inwards or outwards or any other way apart from straight down the line.
So you had leg supports on both legs?
Yes, and then went down to one and then went down to none. Oh yeah, I had occupational therapy as well and physiotherapy as well, and basically had to play catch up with the rest of the class. So
until what age did you have the splints, Joel?
All through primary school, all through the first primary school, and by the second one, I left. Well, schools were not set up for me.
So just listening to that, it's like, yeah, okay, so you had but the impact of that. I mean, how did that impact you as an example in the playground? I mean,
running, I was noticeably slower than everyone else, therefore I would be picked last or not at all, not included.
And how did that impact you personally? How did that make you feel, with basic things like trying to make friends in the school ground?
Yep, still struggling to make them now.
I don't understand why, because you've got one hell of a personality, but
people don't know how to take me, and quite frankly, I can't blame them. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I don't know how to take myself.
When you say, can you elaborate on that? What, on those days that you don't know how to take yourself, what does that look like for you?
I would with certain things, I would have stayed fixated on that certain thing and not talk about anything else. Therefore, like all kids, they got bored and fucked off. oh no, there's that special need person again. But that was in school, certainly. Later on in life, online, no doubt, when I found PlayStation. Oh, there's that retard again.
Wow. And
Yep.
people would use that?
Oh, yeah.
And, it's really, when I listen to this, and knowing, I've got family members, I've got a daughter with ADHD, and, when you hear these things and you realize how far backwards our society is by excluding, because post World War II, everything went into this conveyor belt type machinery orientated thinking. All classrooms were put with the desks facing the same way, so it was yes sir, and let's follow, and let's make cookie cutter and conveyor belt in and out. And and our education system is slowly changing, but it's still so far behind, considering the fact that when somebody is different, and I still see it, and I see it so strongly still today, when a teacher has to deal with a child that is different, they get labeled as difficult, as problematic, and it's easier to take the child and say to the child that they are wrong, or there's that they need to fit in, and so hence one of the terms you used earlier about masking. And it's like and we've used this term before, like the whole asking a goldfish to climb a tree, and it's like, but instead of trying to understand how that individual works, and I know as a parent, you go through these stages where it's sometimes easier to tell your child that they're naughty, go to their room, than sit there and try and figure out what is, like, why are they thinking like they are, what is frustrating them. And we forget, children are different, they're younger, they still have all these things to learn, but sometimes we just want them to know, because time, and it's inconvenient. And we look at all these things. I mean, how did that impact you, knowing that as the always different child in the class, you didn't have a fair swing at things that everybody else just took for granted?
Well, it was tough, and I was the only person in the class, or one of them anyway, that had learning support assistance all the way through my schooling. Looking back now, yes, it was a little. That time I did know I was absolutely not normal, and for a kid to realize that, and to be able to do jack shit about it, well, anyone really, it's tough.
And you mentioned earlier about the fact that you're still facing a lot of this now. Trying to make friends because people don't necessarily get you, and for anybody, the one thing that I guess every human strives for is just to be accepted and loved, and that's quite a daunting thing to realize, that just to try and get accepted, you've got all these barriers to jump over, just so that somebody kind of even give you an opportunity to kind of go, oh, Joel the rock star, the man that plays the guitar, that plays the drums, that's insane when it comes to understanding technology, because you just kind of figure it out and you just get on with it. But most people won't, and even get a chance to understand those talents and interests and things, because of the fact that they don't even get to that. It's that human default of, oh, different, I'll go elsewhere, which instead of different, let me learn. And that's where how discovery is made. That's how innovation happens, is by finding out new things. So we need to help people innovate their thinking. Sorry, Joel. I love that big yawn there. I was like, okay, hold on, Max boring me.
If you must know, Joanne's been giving me jobs today, so.
Good. So what was I saying? So yeah, we need to help people innovate their thinking, just like we innovate with inventions and things like ChatGPT that's coming out that people are starting to get to grips with, and all the other kind of inventions through AI and travel and vehicle changes and electric vehicles and electric aeroplanes that will already in the making in some places. There has to be advancement. So in the human psyche and the way we deal with people that are different, this is the beauty of where you're at with RockstarX, is trying to bridge that gap. And I love your slogan of different, not less.
Oh, that's not mine, but yeah.
But I mean, the one that you've used on a regular basis, because it's so true. That's all it is. It's just different. So, let's talk about a few of the other things that people take for granted. As an example, growing up as a teenager. Now that's an interesting part of our life where we go through all kinds of interesting, physical changes, mental changes. We try and figure out what our journey is. How did you find that journey as a teenager, where by the sounds of what you're saying, a lot of that was a lonely journey because you weren't able to make friends like everybody else was because you were different?
Well, as usual, when we got to that age when PHSCE is taught in schools, I learnt fuck all. Because all they were telling us was how to use dating websites and all that stuff. They didn't explain anything else apart from your personal health and care and how you care for yourself and dating websites and which ones you should stay clear of and stuff like that.
And nothing beyond that?
Nope. Nothing beyond that.
And so this was at school level, am I right?
This was school level, this was at college level as well.
So you get exposed to these different sites, but which parts that did you find challenging that most people assumed you would just know, as an example?
Well, I did actually think they would go into the biggest business and the most at the same time cheap, dare I say, business of when it comes to PHS, SE or SCE, and they didn't go into the porn explaining what that is to anyone, because you either explain what everything is, or you actually assume that teenagers have an idea about it. Well, that may be true, but they would have found out about it, not in the correct way.
I think that I mean, in a lot of societies and cultures, that's still a major problem, because it's as teenagers you go and well, the whole way from toddler right through until adulthood, you go through that inquisitive mind state where, if as an example, if you tell a child not to touch something because it's hot, the first couple of times they're going to try it out until they figure out it burns, and then those senses kick in. So these are all learned behaviors. And when it comes to sex ed and all those kind of things, it's I know in certain it's like it's taboo. You don't.
It's a
not
taboo
even
subject, yet the schools and colleges are required to teach it to you, but they get around it by using everything else and not teaching it to you.
it's yeah, a lot of it's a very soft touch, but at the same time, it's not what's the word? It For the fear of going down the wrong kind of communication path, they'll rather avoid it than actually confront certain
But
questions
people
and
have
things.
already gone down the wrong path.
Yeah. and so I see your especially
I mean, we could have an entire conversation about this on a live and still have no idea
yeah,
what could change.
absolutely. But what one of the things that are coming to mind here is the challenge of I know I've worked with various people who have got various different challenges in life, and in some organizations there is support to be able to explain like basic things and birth control and what do you like, all the additional things that you need to think about in life that are part of the reality and the journey. But then there's certain societies, or it may just be because that's how your home life was, that was the environment. So there's multiple factors that impact the environment through the learning process, but the reality is there's a lot of gaps that potentially can form, and therefore miscommunication, misunderstanding, or assumption that somebody else would have covered that with them at some point. And that assumption is extremely dangerous because what one person may assume that somebody else has already dealt with may just be exactly what you need to know, and because that guidance isn't there, it could stifle growth. It could stifle relationships. It could stifle all those things. What were some of the challenges that you would love to see people have more access to when it comes to education around these things?
Well, taboo subjects for a start. So if you have access to them, actually in a controlled environment, be told what it essentially is real and what isn't, you might have less people on the dark web trying to get what isn't real.
And I think you're 100% right there, because what people are trying to do is feed this fascination for what they think everybody else has access to. And it's like if you watch a lot of movies, and I the first thing that's just come to mind is my daughter when she was about 3 or 4 years old, and she saw like a couple kissing on television, and she was like, "Ooh, gross," and she was like, but she assumed, and it was a comedy where they were literally over acting this piece, and she thought, "Ooh, okay, that's normal. I'm not interested. Don't want to do any of that." But this is what we learn as we grow up through, whether it be music videos or movies, or so what the reality is quite distorted to what you start you could easily start feeling like I'm not normal because I'm not having these extreme engagements that you potentially get on the dark web, as an example. So anything else that comes to mind when you think of that subject and the struggles that you may have faced along the way?
Well, for homework, from our in college for homework, we were told to look on the internet. And if you give that much power, we were told to look on the internet when we got home. If you give that much power to anyone, any teenager or a young adult, I'm sorry, that you created that. It's your problem. It's not theirs. And then you tell, and then
they get into trouble for it.
And then you send them to detention for doing what you told them to do.
And you have people knocking at your door, going, "What are you looking at?"
We're in such a backward society.
Oh dear.
And with RockstarX, I'm trying to unravel this entire bullshit and remove the taboo, because once you do that, it's out in the open. Everyone sort of, oh, it's not interesting anymore. It's something that life. How many people here, whoever is watching, think that life is interesting as soon as you get up in the morning? It's not, because you're living in. It's not a taboo subject. And this is why if we were taught and the taboo was removed, teenagers wouldn't be doing unspeakable things when they're watching movies like Baywatch.
You're giving your age away there, Joel. Actually, there's a newer one.
Yeah, the other one will let better.
I couldn't get past the infomercials showing the show, so I couldn't get there.
But it's become society. You want people to be an adult. You're treating adults with kids that you haven't really taken the gloves off. And then they find themselves down the dark path. And then you put them in cages in the hope that one day they'll come out and be a better person. How does that teach anyone?
Yeah, it's interesting because
men in cages, unnatural.
Well, I think humans in boxes, as we are, we tend to class people so easily, and we look at the other things that then impacted the whole kind of rockstar thinking as well as obviously the education process, being seen as different, not inclusive, because I think the biggest gift you can give somebody that is different is educating other people around them about why they are different and how to approach them. And one of the things you brought up very earlier in me getting to know you was the fact that most of the types of organizations that work with somebody who is different, like autism as an example, are not run by people that are necessarily autistic, as an example. So what you have is a third person who, from their observation, is giving you advice based on their experience. Now, that in itself is an interesting journey, because as we know, the autistic spectrum it's not like it's like this big. It's wide. It's huge, and therefore each autistic person is different, and then there's different other things that impact as well. If I look at my brother as an example, he's got Fragile X, as well as autism, so he's totally different to somebody like yourself who has autism and Maple Syrup syndrome. It's like there's no two people. It's like a fingerprint. Like no two people are the same. So by going to somebody and asking them, well, how do I deal with somebody who has autism, is you're going to get very different opinions and different advice there. And your advice to me was, just come and speak to me, come and ask me directly. And I think that's the beauty of what I see you doing with RockstarX, is the ability to bring people that have succeeded in life, that have faced these battles, to help assist other people in understanding how to deal with people that are different. And I think this, correct me if I'm wrong, this goes way beyond just neurodiversity, because neurodiversity is the challenge that we're facing here, and that we're trying to educate hiring managers and organizations and things like that with. But the reality is it crosses all boundaries. It's cultural, it's racial, it's physical, mental differences, because human beings are just a little bit messed up when it comes to seeing anything that's different, and instead of embracing it, which they should, then they just don't cope. So I mean, if they could embrace Justin Bieber, maybe we can figure out a way how to fix the rest of the world, because that's quite a big embrace. Anyway, I've gone off the tangent slightly, but what are your ambitions when it comes to helping neurodiverse individuals not have to go through some of the challenges you have faced?
That's not mine.
Could be one of mine.
I would say nothing should be off the table. Absolutely nothing should be off the table. And yes, getting uncomfortable. Things are uncomfortable. But if we haven't learned not to make things uncomfortable, we really haven't grown up at all as a society. And we're still kids if we are tabooing left, right, and center.
That's interesting, because the kind of thought and the string of or train of thought that came to mind was, get comfortable having the uncomfortable conversations.
Yes.
And that's something that even though there are a lot of people that have really kind of pushed the envelope on some of these kind of certain topics, a lot of it is and I want to give you a very basic example here of where assumption in education, because people are different, assuming that they would have had the same exposure and education and support and environment that everybody else has. About what are we looking at now? About 12, 13 years ago, I was working with an organization where the most bizarre thing happened. I had one of the operations managers came to me and said, "Mac, man, we're having this weird problem." And I was like, "What's the problem?" And he's like, "Man, in the men's loos, we keep getting footprints on the toilet seats. And we're not sure if somebody's trying to climb into the roof or like, what the hell's going on?" We thought, okay, that is rather bizarre. And he's like, "I don't know how to go about trying to figure out who it is, because I don't want to, embarrass anybody, but I need to find out why is this happening?" Anyway, a few weeks go by, and then he comes back and he goes, "Oh man, again, we've got these foot marks all over." And I'm like, this is bizarre. And finally, in his own frustration, he decides he's going to put cameras outside of the toilet so that he can see who came and went. Long story short, he figures out who it is, and he's struggling mentally to try and bridge this conversation, like going up to somebody going, "What the hell are you doing in the toilet so that you are leaving footprints on the toilet seats? Like, what's wrong with you?" Anyway, he finally plucks up the courage to speak to this guy. And the guy, he was from a certain Asian city where, for them, the normal thing was they didn't have toilets like we did. There were holes that they would squat over. And that was, what he grew up with. And when he moved over to the UK, nobody assumed everybody assumed that he would just it wasn't even a subject that kind of came up, that, hey, things are different here. We do things different here. So he came over 20 years prior and just carried on with the way he was taught. So nothing changed. So for him, it was absolutely normal. And when this operations manager sat him down and went, okay, so listen, let's talk about what are you doing? And he looked at him like the operations manager was an idiot. He was like, what are you talking about? And he says, well, are you putting your feet on the toilet seat? And he was like, yeah. He says, don't you? And he went, no, you're supposed to sit on it. And he went, that's disgusting. And we were like, what do you mean? He goes, so you sit on the same place somebody else sat? He was like, man, I'm not doing that. He says, that's why I put my feet, because I wipe my feet. I'm wearing shoes. I'm protecting them. No germs. Because I'm not going to go and sit on a seat that somebody else has sat on. He says, what are you guys like savages? And so he was seeing what we were doing as something totally ridiculous because he got taught differently, but nobody bridged that gap. Nobody ever had that conversation. And then literally a couple of weeks later, that guy came back and went, oh, interesting conversation. I can't believe that I've always been doing things a certain way. And now I understand why my wife does things differently with the kids. And, it was such a simple thing, but it was two different mindsets, two different ways of being educated. It's like, as an example, my grandfather, who was an amputee, but on both legs. And the first time he said to me, hey, do you mind, taking me to the loo? And I was like, okay, in his wheelchair. I was like, okay. And then he just whoop, pulled himself off the loo, facing the other way. And I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, how do you think we get on the loo, from a wheelchair? And I was like, oh, okay. So there's so many things that we don't realize that we just take for granted. So these conversations that you're talking about, like real simplistic things, is, the taboo subjects that most people just assume somebody else will deal with.
Yeah. And someone else will deal with it, but the wrong way.
And this is where conformity comes in, and this is where children singled out. So, as you were talking
about. This is where we come in as well.
And if you look at what you'd like to see, potentially classrooms or work environments be in the future, what kind of things do you see that should become a norm, as an example, that aren't right now?
Well, currently, as taboo goes, it looks exactly like your background currently.
Slightly blurred?
That's not slightly blurred, mate. That's all the way blurred. All we want to do is to bring the lens into focus ever so slightly, and show people and ourselves, obviously, that with a taboo subject, it's actually not that bad talking about it.
I think there are so many things that can be fixed if people were comfortable, just dealing with, as they say, the elephant in the room. It's like, there's something different. Go and address it. Go and figure it out. Go and find out more about it.
Yeah.
As opposed to walking over to somebody else who also doesn't know how to approach the elephant and going, hey, what should we do about this situation? And then, this is where things like workplace bullying happens, and it doesn't necessarily happen because it's intentional, because a lot of people are oblivious to the fact that because of the way they react to people, it's in effect bullying them. But they don't realize, because they have their group of people who are like-minded and therefore are also responding in the same way. I mean, what do you have to say to people on the other side of the fence, as it were, the ones that are for the lack of a better word, or potentially the right word, ignorant.
Open your goddamn eyes, grow a pair, sit down, shut up and listen. It's not like I've asked you to prance around in underwear for everyone to see. You're talking about subjects here. I'm not asking you to do the bloody thing. I'm asking you to talk about it.
Not so sure where that conversation was going with regards to the underwear, but I'm not. I'm going to leave that one alone. And it's interesting because one of the things that I've learned from our conversations is you are very, what's the word? It's almost like it's kind of black and white. Like if you say something, that's just the way it is, and okay, those are the directions. That's what I'll do, which is kind of like the way it should be, because say you're trying to take people around the houses is a bizarre human trait that we have become so good at, as you say, dodging the subject.
Yes, we've become so good at it. We now vote for them every single 5 years,
or 4 years, depending on where you are. Careful. But one of the things that you said earlier is shut up and listen. And it may sound a little bit coarse or a little bit rough, but actually, sometimes that's exactly what it takes. It's just that little bit of patience to kind of sit down and listen. And it's the same as when you've got kids growing up, or you've got a pet, or you've got somebody that's different. It's just that little bit of patience in the short term can make a huge difference in the long term. I remember, as an example, when my youngest daughter was, I think it was about 3 or 4 years old, and she would fight like, I mean, I thought the end of the world was coming, trying to go to bed. And, if I had a long day, or my wife had a long day, and you'd sit there and think, okay, yeah. And you try and placate the child in a way, but you're not really listening. All you're trying to do is deal with the noise and the shouting and the screaming, and trying to get that to end so that you can have some time off or just kind of relax. And the danger of that is you keep having to go through that vicious cycle, instead of just going, hey, what's the story, and listening, and then finding out, well, I don't like sleeping with the light on, or I don't like having this toy in the room because it just doesn't, and all of a sudden you've got that understanding of what the difference is. It may take a few extra seconds, so you have to shut up and listen. But the result.
But before that, you have to be brave enough to ask the questions. You can't guess what, no one can. Also, it's mentally exhausting.
Well, this is the thing that I was going to ask you, because what people don't realize, for the neurotypical individual, who, as we've discovered, can also go around the houses with trying to, get to from point A to B rather than straight to ask the question, because a lot of the times it's trying to not hurt somebody's feelings and all the rest of it. So you kind of navigate, and so you don't say what you mean, and therefore there's lots of confusion in there. But for somebody on the other side who's a neurodivergent, who thinks very clearly of, okay, how do I go from point A to B? You now have to mask that and take on all this extra brain power to try and figure out, how do I answer, or how do I come across as confused as some of the other people? So okay, I can't say go from here to there. I've got to add all this other fuzz in, and that must be exhausting for you on a daily basis to try and mask just to fit in.
Yeah, it is. It's also, any job I've been in, I'm like, right, okay, I've got to act as dumb as possible just to fit in. I can't have an opinion. I can't do things my way. I've just got to sit back, toe the line, and holy shit, I'm in school.
And that's a common misconception when it comes to the communication style, because looking back over my work history, there have been occasions where if I didn't understand somebody and they came across a little bit abrupt or different, that would be seen as offensive, as an example. And it's like, you're not towing the line, you're not following company policy. But actually, that a lot of the time is brought to light the challenges that we have within organizations, because it's like, hold on, somebody's actually been prepared to say something and they've said it how it is, so now you can fix it. But it's how that is taken on board, because the misunderstanding in communication styles.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, I'm conscious of time, but I know there's so many, I guess, partnerships that you could collaborate with through RockstarX.
Yes.
And we've covered things like sex education, being able to have people that do that specifically for neurodiverse individuals, or music therapy, because we've been, I can't believe an hour's flown past and we haven't even touched on the music side of things. Holy cow, that did fly past. But things like music therapy, being able to provide music therapy and environments to enable neurodivergent people in the typical workspace. What kind of other services would you love to partner with if there are organizations out there, even if they only work within the local community at the moment, but would like to partner and be able to provide support and training and education, potentially on a global scale?
I'm going to probably be shooting way too high when I say this. I've been listening to his podcasts for a good while now. I just started listening to him again, even though he comes from Atlanta, and sounds
You can forgive him for that.
and sounds like a cowboy. I would like to collaborate and partner, and he's on my contacts on LinkedIn. So I don't think he's listening. He's on Clubhouse right now. Is Grant Cardone.
Okay.
And
Jet setter.
What he's done, what he can continue to do with elevating people and, using his term, 10xing them as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, so anybody who's got connections out there knows him directly. I know a few of my connections have met him. I personally haven't.
You kept that quiet.
If you're out there and you've got a line in there for Joel to somehow get connected and have a conversation with Grant Cardone, hey, let's see if that
people like that
happen.
But I will not, and I think you'll be relieved to hear this when I say it. I will not be wanting to connect with anyone or anything with the name Brian Rose.
Interesting. I've seen some interesting interviews. A lot of, let's say, I think we need to be, not necessarily go down that road right now. I know he was running for London Mayor recently.
Yeah, it's exactly why I don't want to be associated with him. Because anyone who enters politics, really, in my humble opinion, is somewhere along the line a professional liar. Because you have to be when you're a politician. You have to be a professional liar. It's on the application.
I I get your idea and your I understand your insights and way of thinking, because unfortunately, historically, people have learnt that politicians, there's that saying of, when do you know that a politician is lying? And they say, when their lips are moving.
Yes, I say
but
that constantly about people I used to know.
Yeah, but the reality is, unfortunately, it's going to take some human beings, and there are a lot of human beings in politics that are truly trying to make a difference.
Yes, it's finding those people.
Yeah, and the reality is, a lot of them are, they're going in fighting, preconceptions. They fighting a lot of challenges. I mean, the fact that as an example, in politics this week, and I don't like getting into politics, but we've got the Ukrainian president who's flown to the G7 summit and all over the world to try and get help to support his country in a war, and then our prime minister is sent home to go and slap one of his team on the wrist because of a speeding fine. And I'm like, just look at the two. I mean, the one that there's like a whole city destroyed, the buildings are rubble, and the other one's like, hey, you were going a little bit too fast, and you asked somebody for some. It's like, guys, come on, let's have real conversations here. Let the politicians deal with those things. It's first world and third world. It's just ridiculous, some of the conversations when you look at the combination. But let's get back to just the RockstarX.
Fighting. We can fight for our right to party. You don't. Since when does that saying require you to bring your own weapons?
That's a different conversation altogether. But
weapons of mass awesomeness. That's what we want to bring here.
Weapons of mass awesomeness. I like that. So I know some of the other topics we've covered and some of the challenges we've faced and spoken about is partnering with organizations like charities that already provide support for neurodivergent individuals, whether it's autism, ADHD, or dyslexia, or any of those things, that already do great work in certain communities, but may want to be able to assist in bringing that to the world. Or we may have a little organization in the middle of somewhere in the UK, in a little town, that's doing incredible work that nobody knows about, but in their community they're doing a lot of work. And I think there's great opportunity to partner with organizations that have already got processes and systems that work, that can then be used to on a global scale to educate people, get their story out there, to show what kind of education and support and what systems and processes they already have in place to help scale those things. So, if you know of an organization that already has a strong foundation in wanting to make a difference for people in the workplace through music, and in whether it's face-to-face or online support, please get in touch with Joel or myself, and make sure that you reach out, and let's start conversations and see where collaborations can go, because at the end of the day, teamwork makes the dream work. And why reinvent the wheel? So, Joel, firstly, I want to thank you for your time. I mean, we've gone well over, but you've shared, although I feel like I've been doing the majority of the talking here.
You tend. I think next time we're gonna have to move you into this box, because you tend to do a lot of talking when you're on the left.
I just realized on the screen, but you've gone into a lot of personal things today that, as you were saying, the uncomfortable conversations, talking about things like the challenges, not being educated when it comes to the sex ed side of things, like just certain subjects that are avoided, and hey, go home, play on the internet, good luck. The challenges of being excluded, feeling left out, being that person that is different, that is not included in things like, just like basic things like making friends and getting to know people. So I really just urge people to really just give this man lots of love, lots of support. Get around and get to know Joel, and other people. If there's somebody different at your work or at your school or in your sports team or wherever you are, if there's somebody that's different, don't treat them in a way that makes them feel that they are,
a pile of dragon shit.
A pile of dragon shit. I've not. Now that, unfortunately, being so visual, I have a very big pile of dragon shit in my head. But go over and embrace. Find out what's different about them, what makes them tick. There are so many incredible human beings out there that, if only we took the time to embrace, get to know what's different, that's where magic happens. So, and I know my life is better for having Joel in it, because I tell you what, the man is he's an incredible mensch, an incredible human being. And had I not taken the time, I would have missed out on that opportunity to help him make a difference in the world. So, Joel, thank you for being your amazing self.
Thank you for being alive today.
Hey, well, one day at a time, but keep pushing forward, keep smiling, keep showing up, keep sharing, how your day is going, asking people how their day is going. And it's interesting because a lot of the time you look at the posts that you put out, and it asks a real question. It's like, how is your day going? Like, what are you up to today? It's like, how many people stop and ask that question? Like if you're on the tube.
I think the further south of England, certainly England, I don't know about anyone else in the world, but further south you go, the less that question is asked, and the more the looks that say, please don't snatch my handbag or hit me or pickpocket me, it tends to creep in.
Absolutely. Although I would say anything south, everything within the M25, that would apply to. Anything further south, Devon, Cornwall, Bournemouth. There are so many beautiful places around the UK where people actually don't. They don't say, "Hey, how are you?" and then walk away. They actually wait to find out really how you are. So, become more human, and give a damn. I think is a really
become more human. Ask questions, wait for answers, and have that conversation.
Joel, I'm looking forward to seeing where our conversation goes, because we've got so much more to go. I mean, this is only episode 4 of
season
10
2
of season 2, and our next one is when neurodiversity meets the metaverse. My mind's already blown just saying that. I'm like, So if you're dabbling in the metaverse, or you're a neurodivergent and you're involved in the metaverse in any way, please come and join the conversation. Drop comments, and let us know. Joel will be sharing that soon. So go and ask your questions before and during.
And also, if you want to pop up as well, I mean, we'll for the first, I mean, this one or a bonus one, we'll be dropping our invite link to the back of the stage that we normally that allows us to come in to this part of the world and speak to all of you guys. We'll be dropping in the comments this time for the first time, because we want you to be involved.
Awesome stuff. I'm looking forward to that. Nothing like keeping us on our toes, eh, Joel?
Yeah, nothing like keeping you awake either.
Okay, well, folks, with that, thank you so much for joining us. Keep those ears and eyes peeled on any form of collaborations, introductions. If you know somebody doing amazing things out in the space working with neurodivergent individuals, make sure we get to know who they are so that we can hear their story too. Thank you very much, Joel. As always, been a pleasure.
As always, Mac, a pleasure is all mine.